So Netflix is in full panic mode as Millie Bobby Brown exposes David Harbour in the middle of the major Stranger Things hype, and this is turning into a massive backlash that nobody at the studio wanted. Okay, so there's drama inside Stranger Things once again as Netflix enters the final stretch of its biggest show, and the headlines out there are wild about Millie Bobby Brown calling out David Harbour in some internal filing. You see, Hollywood always tries to pretend everything on Stranger Things is a perfect nostalgic ride, yet here Netflix is scrambling over allegations that Millie Bobby Brown took seriously enough to document against David Harbour. Now, very few fans actually saw, the situation where Stranger Things would bring possible workplace harassment accusations into the mix itself, especially when Netflix needs goodwill to finish strong, and Millie Bobby Brown has always, looked close to David Harbour publicly. Now, the truth is, fame does strange things, no pun intended, to young stars, and this Stranger Things situation on Netflix with Millie Bobby Brown complaining about the actions of David Harbour allegedly before the final season even rolled camera sets a weird tone. Okay, so basically it's also clear the production of Stranger Things has dealt with every headline possible, and now Netflix sees internal conflict hitting the tabloids just when they needed peace between Millie Bobby Brown and David Harbour. Now, fans actually thought, Stranger Things had a tight-knit cast, and Netflix leaned hard on the image of Millie Bobby Brown and David Harbour being like family, but sometimes that TV family is not real life. You see, there were reports saying that this complaint from Stranger Things started long before Netflix began final filming, and it came from Millie Bobby Brown accusing David Harbour of harassment, but not in a nasty way. But when headlines show Stranger Things tensions like this, Netflix gets nervous, and seeing Millie Bobby Brown take that step against David Harbour makes it clear on set relationships were not as smooth as the fans actually imagined. But what stood out in this Stranger Things report is that Netflix sources emphasized to every outlet that Millie Bobby Brown never accused David Harbour of any kind of misconduct like that in a sexual manner, and that tells me Stranger Things PR is doing maximum damage control because Netflix does not want that narrative attached to Brown and Harbour right now. You see, some fans saw the headline and assumed the worst, but the complaint from the Stranger Things star only focused on bullying and harassment, according to, early Netflix leaks tied to Brown and Harbour. Now, honestly, even without the whole sexual element, harassment accusations can still shake a workplace, and this story actually shakes Stranger Things, Netflix, Millie Bobby Brown, and David Harbour more than they actually expected. Okay, now old school blockbusters never had this kind of open air drama, but this show exists in a time when the streaming giant leaks everything, and every move that Brown or Harbour makes becomes public. But it did not matter if the show's management actually hoped to keep things quiet, because, well, the gossip always spreads when Brown files pages and pages against Harbour. Now, the whole story landed right as Stranger Things season 5 hype restarted, and the streaming giant has no interest in headlines being connected to conflict instead of excitement. Okay. Now, whether or not fans believe it, the friction around the show, Netflix, and leading cast sets tone for production that, well, no one can no longer ignore. Now, the report said that the filing from the show was made after season 4 and before the streaming giant kicked off season 5, meaning Brown possibly carried issues with Harbour for months before anything leaked. Now, That means the show's leadership inside the streaming giant or the platform ran a quiet internal investigation while Brown and Harbour kept working together. Now, some outlets said that the complaint went on for months behind network doors, with Brown supposedly handing over long documentation actually naming Harbour. Now, if everything was cleared and they filmed anyway, well, then everyone involved all chose business first. Okay, so Hollywood thrives on image, and the show is one of the last giant hits the platform has left. So anything involving Brown and Harbour becomes high stakes at this point. Now, if the show continued filming with no recasting, then the company clearly saw no major violation from Harbour that actually required removing him from Brown's presence. Now, it's also a reminder that real life always intrudes on them no matter how much money is involved. Okay, so the Daily Mail actually pushed this story pretty hard, and while the outlets for the streaming giant pretend to stay neutral, they still highlight the drama itself. Now, that's how these headlines actually start to snowball, because once reporters smell tension between two of the leading cast members, the industry rides it. Tabloids love exposing feuds, even if a network, or in this case, a streaming giant, hopes to downplay the fight between two actors, one male and the other female. Now, whether you love the show or not, scandals around the show and the people involved always get attention. Okay, and that's not the surprising right there. Now, some fans online already pick sides like this is part of Stranger Things marketing, and Netflix trolls just jumped in to defend either Millie Bobby Brown or David Harbour. Every fandom meltdown turns into culture talk, and Stranger Things brings out the same behavior that Netflix fans show everywhere else, especially when Millie Bobby Brown clashes with David Harbour. Now, some say that this proves, the family vibe of Stranger Things was, fake, and that Netflix only pushed the image so Millie Bobby Brown and David Harbour looked close for branding. Now, it shows how modern audiences react to real-world drama tied to Stranger Things. Netflix, even with Millie Bobby Brown as well as David Harbour, instead of waiting for facts. All right. Now, even with little detail, the Stranger Things situation shows that Netflix stars are not immune to workplace conflict, and that Millie Bobby Brown clearly thought something that David Harbour he did cross the line. Now, being a superstar on Stranger Things since childhood made Millie Bobby Brown huge, and Netflix turned David Harbour into, a household name as well. But stardom does not erase tension. Now, as this plays out, Stranger Things fans question the real relationship between Millie Bobby Brown and David Harbour, instead of, focusing on the final Netflix season. Now, the industry paints a polished portrait of Stranger Things as well as the platform with Millie Bobby Brown and David Harbour, but reality never matches perfection. Okay, so what really caught attention is how all the tabloids mentioned, the streaming giant running a long process before settling things between Brown and Harbour. Now, when executives take time, it means the show leaders themselves needed to weigh evidence, and Brown gave them enough pages to investigate Harbour. Now, fans also want some clarity, but the PR teams at Netflix do not want messy public fallout tied to Brown and Harbour while they're still promoting. Now, until someone speaks up, well, the show and the cast stay locked in this gray area. And more outlets pointed out how the buzz came right when the platform also saw headlines about Harbour discussing his breakup with ex-wife Lily Allen, while Brown prepares to move on from the show. It's also ironic that Harbour was giving, emotional self-reflection quotes while papers report Brown accusing him that, and that timing gives show watchers another angle because, well, the media always spins public quotes from Harbour while the Brown drama circulates. Now, anyone paying attention to this notices that timing is everything. And he also gave a poetic line about pain and growth, yet here we are with show insiders saying the streaming giants spent time reviewing what Brown filed on Harbour. Now, some see hypocrisy when stars like Harbour preach, healing while network crews quietly process a long list from Brown. The industry spins growth narratives around show actors, but you know what? Real accountability comes from within, and that contrast between speeches and action sticks with fans. Watching show play out public roles. You see, there's no history around Harbour in his personal life where internet culture keeps receipts. So anytime tension rises, people remind everyone that Harbour has had a messy chapters even before Brown knew him. Now, whether fair or not, fans see patterns and gossip about Brown filing on Harbour plays into that. And reputation always lingers in conversations online as well. Now, some skepticism out there always exists because, well, Stranger Things tabloids get stories wrong. And Netflix fans always remember outlets hyping false drama around Millie Bobby Brown before, just like, they have around David Harbour. It doesn't mean Stranger Things reports now are false, but Netflix noise makes people cautious when Millie Bobby Brown and David Harbour headlines spike. Now, still, complaints hit pages and Stranger Things discussions do take off, and Netflix has to go ahead and address it no matter who is right between Millie Bobby Brown and David Harbour. Now, the truth is probably sitting somewhere between personalities, pressure, and even fame inside Stranger Things, as well as the streaming platform and people involved with these different dynamics. Okay, so definitely the culture shifted, and a teenager rising to global fame through Stranger Things means Netflix had to adapt when Millie Bobby Brown grew into an adult while working beside someone like David Harbour. Now, that evolution creates a lot of tension because Stranger Things started with innocence, but Netflix watched Millie Bobby Brown and David Harbour change with success. Now, fans never consider how, Stranger Things power dynamics shift at Netflix when Millie Bobby Brown becomes an A-list face while David Harbour navigates personal, headlines. Okay. So basically, growing up in the spotlight changes Stranger Things, as well as the Netflix with Millie Bobby Brown and David Harbour as expectations shift. Okay, so until then, the final season of Stranger Things still marches forward, and Netflix expect fans to celebrate endings, even as Millie Bobby Brown and David Harbour headlines linger. Now, whatever happened behind Stranger Things cameras, Netflix clearly decided both Millie Bobby Brown and David Harbour finished this story together. Now, in essence, real life tension does not erase what Stranger Things built, but Netflix drama around, Millie Bobby Brown as well as David Harbour adds another layer. If nothing else, then these things that's happening right now prove that fame does not shield anyone from uncomfortable workplace reality. So let me know your thoughts about this in the comments below. Be sure to smash the like button, share the video far wide across social media, subscribe to the channel, turn on the bell for future uploads notifications, and I'll see you all in the next one. Until then, peace.